You are at our first ever Entrepreneurs Forever member roundtable discussion. It has a cool name. It's called In Good Company. It is, our topic today is about hiring and firing and retention. Oh my, that was Terry's name. I love that name. My name is Deborah Gallant, and I am the manager of program innovation at Entrepreneurs Forever. And I'm always trying to sort of gauge the zeitgeist, the what's going on in our peer groups and what people are struggling with, and trying to create programs that address it. And that's where this idea came from. We know how difficult it is to hire people, keep them, and you can't grow a business if it's only you. So what it is In Good Company, it's a chance to idea share. Going to be very simple for the next hour. We'll do some quick introductions. We will have two moderators. We'll introduce ourselves in a moment. We are recording this, and the panelists are going to be talking amongst themselves, but we will also encourage our audience members to participate and ask their own questions. So again, I'm Deborah Gallant. Terry, would you like to introduce yourself?
Terry Doherty here in Pittsburgh, working with entrepreneurs, getting over the anxiety of what it takes to get it done.
And I'm really delighted to have Terry as my co-facilitator and moderator today, because how many years have you been doing this now, Terry?
Oh. Well, in a number of different ways. I've been doing this for nonprofits and for-profits for a couple of decades now.
But he's been one of our facilitators for much longer than I have. I've only been on staff for 6 months. So Terry is very tuned into what's going on. We have 4 of our superstar members from our different groups. Andrew and Tarina are from Pittsburgh area groups, and Jennifer and Terry are from our Massachusetts groups. And I'm going to give them each a chance to introduce themselves, and you'll hear much more about their story. But welcome all, and thank you for joining us. I just want to mention before I go into the actual program, because I know we won't have time at the end, to mention that we have 2 upcoming programs, and we have programs every month. So please do check them out at our events page. Next month is about untangling owner's compensation on Monday, February 27th for our deep dive. And our Forever Forward is about separating your personal and business finances with a financial firewall. So I'm going to stop sharing. Much more interesting to look at each other. And why don't we start the introductions alphabetically? Andrew, you get to go first. So about 3 minutes. Tell us about your business, location, which peer group you're in, how long you've been in business, and how many employees you have, and maybe just a moment or two about going from a solo to having an employees.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hey, really happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to kind of share what's going on in our little corner of the entrepreneurial universe. I'm Andrew Ellsworth. I run a business called Doors Unhinged. My company reclaims and resells commercial door systems. So we take doors, frames, and hardware out of buildings being renovated and demolished, and then we sell them back as a lower cost and more environmental alternative to new. I've been doing that for about 5 years now, which is crazy to think about. I've been a member of the Pittsburgh Hazelwood peer group for about 3 years. Terry Deloty, one of several Terrys today, has been my facilitator. It's been such an amazing experience. We are based primarily in the Pittsburgh area and have ambitions to grow to be more regional and serve East Coast, maybe Midwest a little bit more. And so that's kind of really the moment in our growth curve where we have to examine internal capacities. And so staffing being obviously a key one of those. I really ran the business for 4+ years, essentially by myself, but with temporary labor, occasional helpers, things like that. And I finally just hired a full-time operations director about 6 months ago. So I think we're still in that growth curve, so there's going to be need for more, but it's really kind of balancing the workload, cash flow, and just the day-to-day responsibilities of having employees. Is
Great.
my video frozen? Is that just me, or?
No, I think we're seeing you.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can
and
hear
my-
you. We can hear you, but your face is frozen.
Okay, I don't look so bad in my frozen face, and so I'll stop there. Hopefully, let me mess around with my camera, and then hopefully
And you'll
pass.
come back for the Q&A. Perfect.
Sounds great.
Jennifer Hernandez, why don't you introduce yourself? Same thing about your business, how long you've been around, your group, etc.
Sure. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm super excited to talk about this topic. I feel that it's a really needed conversation. Being in the entrepreneurial space can be fun, but it also can be challenging. And talking about, staffing, hiring, it's a really great topic. So my name's Jennifer Hernandez. I own a marketing agency here in Massachusetts called GEM Marketing Solutions. I've been running it about 6 years. Our focus is on helping small business owners, entrepreneurs, and now we're kind of getting into the nonprofit space as well with affordable marketing solutions. So that could look like website design, social media marketing, email marketing, really a lot of content creation. Because, small business owners, we wear a lot of hats, but it's hard to actually put in the time to market ourselves, but it's a mandatory thing to succeed. So being a business owner myself, we've been growing, and the journey from being a solopreneur to actually having to hire staff, I'd say it's bittersweet. We're so used to doing things in our own ways, and then learning new tasks and responsibilities of being responsible for an employee, for a staff member. But it's a beautiful journey. So right now I have only one staff on with us at GEM right now, and she's wonderful. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. We're growing, things are changing, but I'm really eager to have this be an interactive conversation with the other panelists and guests on their journey.
Fantastic. So I can't figure out, I think Terry comes before Tarina, but I'm not good at alphabet. So Terry, you're up next.
I'm not sure either, but I'll go next. I'm Terry Almquist. I'm part of the Haverhill group. I'm relatively new to Entrepreneurs Forever. I've been in for just a short time. I have been a yoga teacher since 2005. I was employed for myself. I taught yoga in lots of different places. And then in 2008, I opened my first yoga studio. It was me and 2 other teachers. So I had hired other teachers who were at the time contractors. We've switched everybody to employees. Over that time, my studio grew. At some points, I've had 10 to 12 teachers. And during COVID, we closed the yoga studio. We went completely online. And then I reopened a wellness center. So now I have not only yoga teachers that I employ, but massage therapists and desk staff and some other workshop presenters. So I'm up to about 12 employees now doing all kinds of different things. So it's been a quick growth curve in the last. It's actually just about our anniversary. We reopened in the Wellness Center last March. So we've had all new hires, and it's been an exciting journey.
And Terry is going to tell us a different thing than I think the others have, which is she's had a great experience hiring people. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
And our final person, Tarina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for having me on board. Great topic, as Jennifer stated. My name is Tarina J. Hicks, and I am the owner and CBO, which is Chief Baker Officer of Cobbler World. We are a nostalgic baked goods company. I have a retail location downtown Pittsburgh. I've been down there for 7 years now. I've known Thierry. I met Thierry. I think I've known Thierry as long as I've been in business. I met him at the Pittsburgh Public Market, the new location.
I remember your first day in the kitchen.
So what we focus on obviously cobblers of all kind, peach, apple, cherry, you name it. Give me a fruit. I always tell people I'll put it in a cobbler. But we do things that most bakeries and bake shops no longer make: your coconut cream pies, your pineapple zucchini breads, pineapple upside down cakes, lemon meringues, just to name a few. We've been growing. We're in 3 Giant Eagle Market District stores now. We have partnered with a lot of other small businesses, Millie's Ice Cream, Action Housing, Pittsburgh Regional Transit, Earmark, Levy Restaurant, and so on. I've been baking since I was 14, and I started my company after a layoff 9 years ago now. I was working for Carnegie Mellon, which is where I got my master's from. And, you know, others in the other department were so sad for me. And they were like, you can go to another department. I'm like, no. This is my defining moment to do what I love to do. I've been baking. I learned from my mom at the age of 14. So this road of entrepreneurship is tough, but I enjoy it. You know, I work longer for myself than I did for any other company that I worked for. But, you know, I wouldn't turn back for anything now. So thanks a lot. And I look forward to this interaction.
Terrific. I'm going to hand it off to Terry now.
Well, I think there's been some very different journeys here. Some of us are on pathways where we've managed people in the past, and some of us, we've actually become accidental managers as we've become entrepreneurs and experienced growth. So I think one of the we'll go with a positive question first, or a positive outcome. How did you find the best person that you have? Or your best employee, even if you've had several, who's the best one and how did you find them?
I can share my experience. I actually found her by accident. So that was wonderful. I was actually mentoring her. She had reached out. She had saw my agency, and she had a really high interest in maybe opening one marketing agency of her own one day. And so she just kind of wanted to see how the ropes are. What is a day in the life of an agency owner? And when she was here, you know, she came a couple times and I could really see the potential in her. And of course, as we all know, from where we are today, owning a business, sometimes we could have never even imagined where we were. It's a very long journey. These things don't happen overnight. There's a lot of things that happen to get us where we are today. So she kind of realized that, and she would need to begin at ground zero. So we actually talked, and she came on as an employee, and it was a beautiful experience. So I think just a takeaway of me finding that person, it wasn't unexpected, but what drove that experience and that opportunity was seeing the potential in that person, and the drive in that person, and willing to learn. Because I think that's big when you're trying to find someone that is willing to educate themselves and learn a new skill set.
Awesome.
I'll share mine next. My general manager that actually runs my store downtown, I grew up with her father and her uncles. And we actually got reconnected at an event 2 years ago. And she saw that I was doing everything by myself, running the shop, doing all the baking, making deliveries and everything else. And she said, you know what, I'm gonna come on board and help you. She said, you know, God said this is a season where I'm supposed to help others. And she's been a godsend. She has the ability to upsell when people come in the shop. Not only are they walking out with what they intended to buy, but they're walking out with something else that she suggested. She's great at marketing. She has excellent people skills. And she's been with me off and on, and she's going to be off again because she's a single mom now. And I'm like, you have to get somebody in here who is as good as you are. And that's the thing, when you have somebody in the store that's running your store, you know, they're the face of your company. Mm-hmm. And if she speaks badly, if she has, horrible communication skills, and she can't upsell, and it's going to reflect badly on me. So she's been a godsend. And I just hired another person to help me bake in the kitchen. And actually, we go all the way back to elementary school. She's a chef by trade. She's great at cooking food. So I'm now teaching her my way of how I bake, my technique of how I get things done. So I'm glad she has that culinary piece, because I don't have it. I went to college. I didn't go to culinary school, but so I can learn some things from her as well. But I'm teaching her now how I actually bake. So it's been a blessing so far, but I do have some horror stories of people that have worked with me as well. So, and we'll talk about that later.
Well, that's really interesting. Your best employee hired you instead of you hiring them.
Exactly.
All right, Terry, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah. My best employee found me. I have a wonderful desk salesperson who the space we're in for the wellness center was previously a gym, and she had worked at the gym. And when she saw our coming soon sign, she ended up, we have a weird connection where her best friend dates my neighbor. And so she got my email address and simply sent me an email that said, I'm really interested in what you're doing. Can we talk? I ran the desk at the gym. And I hadn't even at that point like put together a posting for an employee for the desk. And we met and we talked. We had to meet in a space next door because construction was going on. And she's been a godsend. She's young and she's hungry, and she is a personal trainer on top of all her other amazing things she does. But she's also great at social media. She loves doing that. So she's really taken over the social media piece and does a lot of marketing stuff. And she has been fabulous. So she found me. So that's, I think Tarina and I had the same experience of our best employees found us.
I want to actually tie that together. It's not necessarily about posting. It's about being open to the universe and who's out there and thinks what you're doing is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of my employees come from people who have practiced yoga or are part of our community, our wellness community already. So I always post in-house to start. So, but we'll get back to a little more of that.
All right. Well, Andrew, of the people that you've had trying to help you in different ways, who was your best hire and how did you find them?
So I think our work is complicated in a lot of ways and requires a bunch of specialized skills. So I wouldn't say there's one person that's been good at everything and does, nails it all. There's different people that have different strengths in terms of how they approach the work, in terms of their hard skills, in terms of their level of focus, attention to detail. But I agree, you just can't, like, the traditional channels did not work. Job postings yielded basically nothing, right? A paid LinkedIn post generated a lot of people that all they had to do was click to apply for a job. No cover letter, didn't follow, wouldn't respond. And it was really, I think, people that had some sort of connection, right? Like, so my operations director, our kids go to the same school. I'd never met him. I'd never met his wife. Our kids were in class together, but that was sort of like the opportunity to even talk. He didn't even have sort of skills in the built-in sort of design and construction, but what he had was a lot more passion, problem solving, and just sort of more of a can-do attitude, ready to show up and not be, I would say, hindered by having too much experience in an industry that we're actually trying to change.
Well, that's interesting for everyone. The best employees had a whole lot of initiative and they brought other skill sets to the job, even more than what you were anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a hard question now for everybody. As a solo entrepreneur, you do everything. You have 5 different job titles that you have wedged underneath the title of owner. And each one of those jobs has a value to it. But how do you determine what to offer someone, what to pay someone for the job that you're putting out there? Aha, I knew that was going to be a tough one. Go ahead, Terry.
I'd be happy to start that. Since we moved everybody after COVID, we moved everybody to employees. There's a lot of yoga studios that use their teachers and massage therapists and people like that are contractors, but we made a decision to make them employees. So some of it was sort of figuring it out on our own. We knew we wanted to pay more than minimum wage. And oftentimes that just comes down to what's your budget. But we knew that going in, people need to make, especially post-COVID, people need to make a wage that they can live off of. And so I'd rather have less employees making a living wage than have a lot of employees that make very little. Mm-hmm. So that's some of how we started. And then just looking around at what other people are offering. It's hard to offer a low wage when at the time it's hard to find employees. Dunkin' Donuts is offering $17, $18, $19 an hour. You can't really get somebody in who has skills and that drive for less than what the local fast food places are offering. So some of it was that, and some of it is just going wage, looking around LinkedIn and looking around. You had mentioned, Andrew, what is the other hiring, online hiring? Indeed, looking around there and seeing what people were offering, that was helpful for me because I had never hired massage therapists. I never had desk people before. I just had yoga teachers. So it was a big shift. So that's a lot of looking at what's going wage, but knowing what the smaller, less skilled jobs are offering and then being able to pull in good people by offering them more.
And that's an interesting point to do that research, because as entrepreneurs, a lot of times we start our business and don't take the time to research what the market will bear for what we're offering.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I'll go next. The chef that I just hired on my staff, I had to look at her qualifications. I had to look at her years in the industry. And as Terry had mentioned, she can go anywhere else and get $20 or up, an hour because of what she brings to the table. So I had to take all that into consideration. My general manager, I had to look at what I was selling on a daily basis. And that was how I was able to quantify what she would make an hour. We need to sell this many cobblers and this many, per day, in order to meet your salary. And she has excelled, that qualification. And then my delivery driver, she came on board. She's been with me for 2 years now. And she said, you don't even have to pay me. She didn't even want a salary. She just wanted to help me because she saw how I was doing everything. So what I pay her is the delivery fee that I charge all of my clients and customers. And she's been fine with that. So if I'm charging, Giant Eagle $25 per drop and all my other that's what she gets every 2 weeks. And she's fine with that. So the next person I bring on board, I have to go back and check and, they can go to McDonald's, get $20 an hour, but I have to, be able to meet that in order to retain my employees. So.
Yeah, but Tarina, that's a great example of understanding your cost of goods as a part of how productive the employee needs to be valuable. Because
Exactly.
we initially see employees as an expense, but we also need to look at them as a generator.
Katie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So I make ice cream and I'm in the food world. So we have tight margins. So it kind of limits what we can offer. And because we're a wholesale business, we also, we don't sell things at full price, which also limits our ability to match wages of like a restaurant that sells at full price. So the things that we've had to figure out are how much can we pay and how much is our environment worth. So we have a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, 5 paid sick days, paid holidays, week off paid between Christmas and New Year's. And we don't throw things at employees, don't spit at them, don't tell them that they're terrible people. So like all of the things that fit inside a restaurant box of food service, where, okay, yeah, you can go work at that restaurant now or at that Dunkin' Donuts for $18 an hour, but you're going to be most likely not treated great and have really terrible hours. So there's a trade-off, and we find that we've attracted employees that are looking to escape the toxic kitchen environment, would like to spend time with their families, would like to spend holidays with their families, would like to actually have a family. So the trade-offs of a little bit lower pay scale for us are just quality of life things. So we tend to attract people who are balancing multiple things beyond just pay. So that's
Katie, that's great too, because when we are a solo entrepreneur, we actually do have a company culture, whether we know it or not. And then when we bring someone else into that culture, if it's hectic and toxic to ourselves, we're going to infect that person when they come in. So having those standards and those expectations and communicating them, that has a really high value to it.
Claudia, I see your hand up.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is really helpful. I'm Claudia Middendorf. I own Matilde Heirloom Quilts. And so my question is, do you all, or some of you, figure out the process of production ahead of time before you hire? Or is it kind of a hand-in-hand process where you're trying to kind of streamline the process? You kind of generally know what you want, but do you work with your employee on kind of fleshing out some of the bumps and processes that are required when you start working with someone else, you know, the communication back and forth and so forth? Like, how does that work for you? Because I'm finding that I have my own process, but then when I hand it over, that process starts deteriorating once I hand it off.
Can I answer? I spent a lot of time dealing with that because we are essentially kind of doing fabrication and manufacturing and order production. And so again, when I was a solo entrepreneur, it was all up here, and I knew the stage that everything was in, and I knew that thing goes with that, and there might be like 25 different components on this project, but I knew all what they would be. And we just had to do was realize that this was a partnership and that it wasn't all going to be my way, that I needed to find ways that were going to work for both of us from a different perspective, saying, number one, I don't know everything in your head, right? And number two, I approach this from a different point of view. And so establishing a process to create a process, I would say that's shared, is, I think, important, and ready to approach it, to know that you have to work out the bumps, and you have to do that as a team and not as kind of a dictum.
Jessica, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say along those lines, as you SOPs, right? The further you get down the production line, standard operating procedures are a pain in the neck and your best friend simultaneously. It's super important when you're passing off, responsibilities of your product to another person, that there's a codified system in production for them to follow. And they'll get it. I mean, there's always a little bit of squiggle wiggle, right, to somebody's way, but the core, and I think Katie, Leona's hasn't worked out, but like if you want to be able to replicate your product, it's kind of the crappy side. I think the boring side, maybe not the crappy side, but the boring side of production is creating those, which I, by the way, just dictated to somebody because I did not have time to sit around and do it. And so I drafted a human to type while I did it. And that worked really well for us in creating a pamphlet of SOPs.
And I'll just point out, there was a deep dive with an amazing organizer that taught everyone how to create SOPs. So there's more recorded education on this. Katie, did you want to say something, or did you need to get called away? Okay.
Sorry. I just had to figure out how to turn things on and off quickly. One thing that I've learned, we have pretty robust SOPs. So we do production as well. And we're trying to make things uniform, even though to look like a robot did it, even though it's human hands that do it. And all human hands work a little bit differently. And I've made it a point to hire people who are far better at baking and pastry than I am. So I definitely rely on their experience and on their knowledge of the baking and pastry world and what they've done in previous positions. So I say, okay, I have a standard. This is what I need it to look like. If you have a better way to get there than what I do, then make sure you practice it. And then I need you to share it with everybody. And I need you to tweak the SOP.
Great.
So it's
I actually want to
ongoing.
Bring this around to a question that Katie McMahon typed in, which is, how do you communicate that culture, that Katie-ness about Leona's, to a potential or a prospective employee, so you make sure that they're on the same wavelength as you?
We're actually doing that right now. We have 2 people that are just a week in. We are very clear and upfront in our interview process. Our trainers, training is kind of shared amongst the staff. So the way we don't have a hierarchy so much, everybody learns every single part of every job that is to be done. So you kind of have a global understanding of how things happen and why they happen. But we also constantly communicate. I'm always walking around, pointing things out. Everybody is empowered to maintain standards. So if someone who's working in the baking station, baking cookies, sees you making dough and it's not being creamed enough, they're going to stop you and say, you need to cream that more. So everybody is responsible for upholding the company culture. We also try to have, weekly meetings where we talk about everything from like who's going to be out of town to like, does anybody have anything they want to bring up about something that's happening in the kitchen? And it's always a yes. Someone always has some feedback. Someone always has some constructive criticism. And we talk a lot about constant improvement in little tweaks. We've made all the big, huge improvements that have gotten us to where we are. And now it's all about tiny little fine-tuning tweaks. And everybody is responsible to bring those to the table and make sure that they're part of every day. So every process is constantly kind of evolving and tweaking and becoming more efficient. So I put it a lot on them and I'm like, make this the place you want to work.
Mhm.
Because I, as the owner, like I'm growing the business, I'm taking meetings.
Mhm.
I can't be sitting there micromanaging, and I don't want to. If I have to micromanage you, then you're probably not the right fit for my company.
All right. I want to jump back. Thank you for that, Katie. That was great. But I want to jump in, Jennifer. We're not forgetting about you. Your industry is very different. You're not in the, the kind of the production side. You're on that whole marketing and image and identity side. What about, how did you figure out not only how to, what to pay someone, but also how to keep them and retain them in your company?
Yeah, great question. So yes, I am a little different since I'm a service-based business. What I did was I took an analysis of other, competing positions, looking at what they're offering. But honestly, as an employer, I have found that just being a employer these days is a lot different. I feel like employees are looking for other things that don't have anything to do with compensation. So yet I do want to pay them well, and I did, and it was competitive if they were going to be another marketing manager or social media manager in another organization. But I feel that relationship, transparency, flexibility, these type of benefits were so much more important to my employees than the actual the actual compensation. However, telling them that there is a lot of potential going forward for growth, but I felt when they feel supported in other areas, just not that compensation wise, it tends to be a good fit. And it comes back to the culture. It comes back to the culture.
And Andrew, you didn't get to share your thoughts on compensation. Before we move on, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so I actually I kind of had a false start with the first operations director I hired maybe a year and a half ago. That person just wanted to kind of figure out how to be a consultant, but like work their way into a bunch of equity. And so that was making me uncomfortable. I'm glad it didn't work out. The separation was mutual. But when I hired my current operations director, I really wanted to create a sense of ownership and urgency and hustle. And so what I did was I actually kept salary on the lower end of the spectrum that I thought was reasonable, and then offered profit sharing, because being in that growth curve, if we don't get there, then like nothing's happening, right? But I felt like it's easy to settle in and be like, great, I have a great salary And I hope that growth happens, but it doesn't really matter to me if it does or not, because I walk home with this coach salary. So I wanted to create a little bit of hunger and a little bit of opportunity to kind of like demonstrate hustle and reap the rewards of that kind of hustle.
I see Claudia's hand up.
Hi, quick question to those of you that have already kind of scaled up, like going from solopreneur to that next step. At what point did you hire your operational manager? Was it when you had 2 or more employees, or was it pretty immediate?
What's an operational manager?
Exactly what I was going to say. I was like, I want one of them. They sound great.
Well,
That's
somebody
the kind
that's gonna, yeah, somebody's that's gonna handle, like, really kind of take it off your plate. And sorry for that. And
I'm sorry, Claudia.
kind of-
I was being super facetious.
oh, okay.
My apologies. We don't know each other.
Jessica, what's your business?
I own Una Biologicals. So we manufacture body care here in Pittsburgh. We have a store and a manufacturing site. And I was laughing because we have 9 staff and I don't have an operations manager.
Yeah,
and I would love one.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to hear from you, because at one point I had a financial mentor say, you know, in year 5 you're going to need an operational manager, and I thought, wow, that sounds just like, you know, like big, you know, thinking big. So I just was kind of wanted to take a quick you know, survey of how different people manage it. And yours is something that I feel like I probably wouldn't do, is have an operational, but maybe somebody that oversees other people working. So super helpful.
Katie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so it took several years, but when it got to the point where like I couldn't both do the growth and all of the meetings and all of the interviewing and all that stuff and keep an eye on the kitchen, I hired someone to be a manager. We only had 3 employees. She had a ton of experience, and she grew it to the position to the point where she needed an assistant, and that person kind of took over. We had her for 5 years and they just left. What I did was found the next 2 skilled employees and put them both up, and split the position because it was a lot. But I feel like as soon as you can afford it and you have the right employee that fits, don't hire a manager, promote a manager.
I know Terry and Tarina both wanted to say something.
Okay, go ahead. Terry, go for it, and then Tarina.
Yeah, I ended up with a manager sort of accidentally. I wasn't looking for one, and they're in the room with me, so I have to be careful about what I'm saying. I actually was doing a lot of mentoring of yoga teachers, and then that turned into sort of an international thing, and I was starting to be asked to go and do continuing education stuff internationally, and I needed someone to sort of run my studio, and I had a teacher who was super competent and had the ability to kind of shadow me for a little while and figure out what I did. And so he ended up doing a lot more of the management. And then at one point he moved out of the country, and we figured out how to do distance work long before COVID because I couldn't afford to lose him. So he took over the things that he could do from a distance, and I do the in-house stuff, and it's worked out really, really well. But it was promoted from in. Somebody who came in to mentor with me and then became a full-time teacher with me and took over that sort of managing when I wasn't around, and then took over managing when I was around too. So that allowed me to grow personally as well, not just in my business, but in my other business and my other personal things in my life. I've been able to grow because I have a manager.
All right, Tarina, how about you?
My general manager, she may not have the title of operation manager, but she operates in that capacity. You know, she has taken a lot off of my plate. People were calling my phone, inboxing me, DM me for, you know, can I order this? Can I order that? And she took that all off my plate, you know, posted on social media. You want something, you call the shop. I'm the one who will take the orders. I'm the one who will relay the messages to her. I'm the one who's keeping her schedule for her. So she's allowed me to be free so that I can focus on other aspects of my business, like hiring this pastry chef, like focusing more on my administrative work, going out, getting more accounts and so forth. She's excellent. And I hate to lose her, but she's excellent. And when you're hiring someone, you really have to know what skill set they have so that you can be alleviated from that, and working with her over the years, I've learned that she's great at marketing. I learned that she's great at promotion. I learned that she's great at, operations and, she's even pulled things out of me that I didn't know. She got me my first wedding in September. So I'll be making my first wedding cake this year. So, you have to know the skill set that person possesses in order to free you up from some things so that you can continue to grow your company.
Serena, that was a fantastic job description for an operations manager that you just laid out there.
Could I add to this, Claudia? I feel like if you're in a growth mode in your business, I think you will find that you as the entrepreneur needs to be the one that's focusing on expansion and sales and all the things that are going to make the place bigger. And you need someone that's basically going to keep the wheels turning and the materials being produced and getting stuff done that people actually pay for, right? And so regardless of the title, you need to understand the responsibilities that if you are still seeing yourself in doing a lot of the production, you're going to run into that kind of like push-pull where you're still getting pulled in a lot of directions, and so being able to release some of those things to someone who can handle operations and I think as several people have said, they've grown into that role, right? And you got to give them the room to grow and like work them toward like, soon you're going to have this whole section while I'm working over here. That's how
I think we had a question from Mindy in the chat there. Mindy, do you want to pop on and read your question to everybody?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, and I operate a hiking business. We do single and multi-day hikes, and I'm a solopreneur doing it all. I do have this year I'll have 12 contractors who are the guides, and this year I'm pulling back from doing a lot of that guiding, but I really need an assistant. I'm buried with particularly the marketing stuff, some operational things, and I'm not yet, able to take any money out of the business. I've not reached profitability yet. So I'm in that moment, I'm not sure what my next step is. Like, what's the path to get there? Because in order for the business to get big enough to afford that person, I'm going to burn myself out in the midst. So any guidance I'm open to.
I'd love to hear from the panelists because I bet they've all sat where you're sitting.
How about Jennifer? How about you?
Yeah, I feel that I've been in your shoes, and it's scary. The work needs to get done, but you're getting really overwhelmed. And I've been able to take advantage of interns from local colleges when I haven't been able to actually afford another employee or my first employee. That is what was helping me get through. I know there's a lot of organizations that put youth workers to they'll pay for you to be in your business and learn a new skill set. So I'm not sure if that's anything you've ever considered, but I understand your pain. That's how I did it before I was able to grow and get enough revenue in to actually afford an employee.
Like you, Jennifer, a couple of years ago, I worked with a youth organization, and I was able to bring 2 employees on that I didn't have to pay directly. The organization paid them. But you also may want to reach out to like some senior organizations, because there are a lot of seniors who are looking to work, just want to get out the house, and they will help you. So that's another option for you as well.
Thanks.
I think like this is a perennial question, right? And this isn't one that is going to go away, because you'll kind of you'll level up, and then you have a whole new set of things that are stressing you out, and you still don't have enough money to do all the things that you need to do and have all the people on staff. And so I think I got to be honest, marketing is to me like it's like a bottomless reservoir. You can keep pouring resources into it, right? And you never feel like you've filled it. And so I just eventually had to be like, okay, I'm doing some, and like that's what it is. If we're getting enough business and we're growing, that's great. Because I just feel it could just be that it could take 40 hours a week if you wanted it to. But maybe there are other things that are like maybe not on the essential level, maybe they're just the next level up. And if they didn't get done all the time or perfectly the way you want them to, maybe that's okay for now. I don't know. It's just tough. It's tough choices all around. I wouldn't say there's a good answer to that.
Yep. Perfection is the enemy of success.
I also might suggest that the tasks that you have in mind, Mindy, might be addressed by a virtual assistant who you could pay hourly to do just quite specific things that you can budget for and not feel like you have to have them on payroll or be 1099ing. They just invoice you for the work that they do.
Yeah, I did just test out working with a copywriter who I paid $250 to write a little like lead magnet for me. And it was great. And it was so worth spending that amount of money, which I was surprised at how inexpensive it actually was. And then it let me get something done, to help along to get that like up and running. So I'm looking for little ways even to do that.
Great.
Thanks.
Peter's had his hand up for a while.
Go for it. Yeah.
You're muted.
Can't hear you, Peter. Sorry.
We're not hearing you, Peter.
If you want to type your question out, we'll read it.
He was asking before about W-2 employees, 1099 employees.
Okay. How does everyone make the choice of getting a 1099 or a W-2, or do you start them off as 1099 and evolve into a W-2? Terry.
Can you hear me
There
now?
are some, I'm not a financial person, but there are some government kind of criteria that you have to meet in order to hire some people as contractors. If it's the nature of your business, and you set their hours and tell them what to do, then technically they should be an employee. But this is one of those questions, ask your accountant. If you're not setting their hours, like they're a copywriter on the side, or they're coming in to do work on their own hours, then they can be 1099 employees. I made the decision post-COVID to make everybody employees so that they're covered by unemployment, so they're covered by workman's comp, so they're covered by all of those things that are the safety net that saved a lot of people. I had a hard time finding massage therapists when I opened because so many massage therapists have left their field because there was no safety net for them. They were independent contractors. They got no government assistance for a very long time, and they went and found other jobs. So I want to make sure everybody, it's just my philosophy, and it's part of how we treat our employees to make them employees. And I understand that every business is different, but for me, that was an important point in making the decision to make everybody an employee.
Sorry, can you hear now or no?
We can hear you now, Peter.
Yeah, what I said is, what I was trying to say is I'm in Mindy's position, and my business is slightly different because I actually own a franchise, and I'm a digital marketing agency. So for the implementation of the work, I have people to do that, and they get paid on project basis. So it's similar to what Mindy hired a copywriter, right? Whatever I want to do, I work with the franchise teams to implement it. The issue that I'm having is I'm stuck in a similar situation where I'm doing account management and I'm doing sales. And now I have a lot of accounts, which is consuming too much time to grow with focusing on sales. So a lot of it, what I'm looking for is and I've talked to people, how do I get somebody that says, listen, I'm looking for somebody to help the business. I'm really looking for somebody to join the company and grow within the company. But I'm in a situation where profits are still pretty tiny, and I don't have enough money to pay you $100,000 a year salary. and benefits and all that. Yes, a year, 2 years from now, probably, but not now. And that's where I'm stuck.
Do any of our panelists want to comment on that position? I think it's an interesting one. Peter's in my group, so I've heard him talk about it before.
This jumps to me. It sounds like maybe if you have a commission basis, I mean, the whole point of account management is to generate more business from that account, right? And so can they be given a cut that says, if you do a good job with this and you keep those accounts and they keep doing business, then that's growing the business and taking some of those things off your plate. And so you got to find that person who has those sort of soft skills that's going to be like complementary to, you know, meeting the needs of clients and being a good welcoming face for the business.
Peter, I'd like to make a suggestion. I have a marketing agency myself, and how we work is normally my staff who is doing the actual implementation of the work, they're kind of responsible for managing that account. So, I mean, I will check in once in a while and say, hey, how's things going? But the day-to-day interactions we've kind of outlined of how like the customer experience should be. So, you know, I just think potentially there could be room alleviated off review if you're kind of showing the staff that you have now, the contractors that are doing the work, how you want it to flow, and so you can put more attention to sales.
All right, I want to try to squeeze one more question in for everyone's benefit. Being an entrepreneur, you have to be really resilient with disappointment and having something go wrong and trying it again. So we've talked about finding your best person, but how do you deal with when you have to fire someone who is underperforming or is a bad cultural fit for the organization?
Look at Andrew's face. He's like, oh, don't ask me this question.
I know. Can I do this number?
But this is important for everyone to know, is that we're all going to face this. And I know some of the hardest things I've ever done is had to fire people, and it sucks. But it's one of the important tasks that we can only do as the owner, usually, unless we have an operations manager that's doing it. So how have you dealt with having to fire someone? I want to hit our panelists with that one first, if we can.
Well, for me, I haven't had to deal with this yet, so I'm going to step away from this question. And I know one day I will ultimately have to, you know, deal with this issue, but since I've been in business, I haven't had to fire anyone.
Lucky you.
Okay, Terry, let's hear the horror story.
I don't think it was really a horror story. I have good relationships with people I work with, but we had a teacher who was teaching yoga who wasn't kind of following my concept of, one of the things that's really important to me is we don't touch people in my yoga class. We are hands off, and she just wasn't buying into that. And so I said to her, you can do a class with me. So I set up the schedule so she would teach a class that I was in, and then she would take my class afterwards to learn the culture. And she wasn't interested in that. And so she made the decision not to continue to teach for me. So, okay, you know, it was about offering her more training to get her on board with what we were doing, and her saying, that's not what I'm interested in doing. And so that left us in a place where it was a mutual decision that she would go. So I've been very lucky that I haven't actually had to say to somebody, you need to go.
All right.
Similarly, I have not actually dropped the axe. However, that doesn't mean I haven't had people that I've sort of like just let wander off. And that kind of goes back to the last question about subcontractors and 1099. And having that is a great way to sort of test out how they work, and if there's someone that you want to bring in and bring up from above, up from below, I mean. And I remember I had one subcontractor to help me on a job site, and I've never seen anyone walk so slowly in my life, right? And so I was not hooked in, right? It was like, did not get a call back. That was it. And so I think, I don't know, as someone who's actually fired someone, but I feel like you can hopefully like take off some of the risk by test driving them a little bit before you bring them on. And I think that's also mutual for them as well.
Okay, Jennifer, I want to hear from you, and then we'll open it up.
Yeah, sure. I really agree with Andrew. I've never had to fire anybody, but the only time I had to have kind of a conversation is when I took on a contractor 1099 to start to do some work. And I was so happy that I did that because I could, I think within like 2 to 3 weeks, I could tell this wasn't going to be a good fit. But I wasn't locked in as employing this person and having to fire them. So I haven't really experience having to fire someone, but I know this is something that I need to prepare myself for. So I would really love to hear from anybody else that has really done this because I need some tips.
Okay. Go for it, Jessica.
I feel like I feel a little awkward because I think I've let a lot of people go over the years. Katie, I saw your face, so I feel like maybe I was like, wow, am I like the meanest person ever? Which isn't really true. I know that. So I would say I have two approaches. And one is that a lot of times as an owner, you know when somebody's not fitting, right? You see pretty quickly when the vibe isn't working anymore or when something's off. So generally I try to step in right then and just have a conversation. And usually we like go for a walk and it's more of like a check-in, like seems like something's off. This isn't really fitting for you right now. And it's a way to kind of preempt the like hard acts and figure out, is there a solution? Like Terry, is there a training opportunity? Is there a way that we can get us back on track? Or are we just like not in the right place? That's worked a lot for us. And when it doesn't work, it's super crappy. And you just have to put your big girl panties on and rip the Band-Aid off, is my technique anyway. I would love to hear, I think that there's some ambiguity on my end around, when you do fire somebody, is there a best practice in terms of like pay, end of the day, beginning of the day? Does anybody have experience there that's been like, this was really awful, don't do it this way? Or are there, we've done it a few different ways and I try to wrap up all of their, pay and, any accrued PTO and whatever into their very next paycheck so that we're not dragging out our relationship. But I usually let paychecks handle that. I don't do it like the day of, like, here's your final money, that kind of jazz. So I don't know if there's any insight on that side, but it's sucky experience and you just have to remember that it's work and it's not personal. That's always my.
Serena, do you have your hand up?
I was going to say, even though I've not experienced this, but I think there should be some plan of attack if you do have to terminate an employee. I think there should be like a termination checklist that you need to have in place. There should be some warnings beforehand, before that employee is terminated, pink slips. Like she said, just go for a walk and see if there's, some type of develop some type of performance improvement plan. Maybe they're not fully understanding what they're supposed to be doing. So maybe these are some things that you can kind of implement and see if that will get the employee back on track before you actually terminate them.
And Terry's pointing out there could be a bunch of legal things, keys, passwords, computers. We're actually at time. I love this conversation. And we did have a sort of a final setup question for each of the presenters. And I actually want to open it up if you guys are willing to stay here. Just like your best tip about hiring people and managing people. How would we put it? Your best advice about hiring and talent management. So we're going to start with the panelists, and I'm going to do it in reverse alphabetical order. So Andrew, you're not first. Tarina, you're first. Just a thought that you would share to, like, tell me about your experience hiring. What is it?
You have to make sure that that person has complete buy-in to your company, to your vision and mission, and that they're a good fit, not only with you, but with the company as a whole. Because if they are dysfunctional, they don't see your vision, if they're not in alignment with you, they can destroy your whole company. So you have to make sure that they're a good fit, that they have complete buy-in, and that they have great interpersonal skills, because they're going to be working with other people. So that's imperative.
I love that advice. That's great. Terry?
I would say be clear about who you are and what your mission is before you hire anybody. Because if you're not clear about who you are, then they have nothing to buy into. I often just follow your gut. A couple of times I made the mistake of giving someone the benefit of the doubt when my gut instinct was like, this isn't a good match. And I don't do that anymore. If your gut instinct in an interview is like, I'm not sure, move on. There's lots of people in the world. And if they're not a good match for me, I don't want to waste their time either. There's some other thing out there for them that's
Excellent
so
advice.
much better for them.
Great. Jennifer.
Yeah, the people in my group would know I'm a strong believer in listening to my gut, my intuition. I really work my base, my company off of what that energy of how I'm feeling about the people I work with, even clients. But my recommendation is that planning for the future, filling positions with people that are aligned with where you want your company to go. Because as we know, all of us, our business has gone from 0 to 100, pivoted many times. We've offered different services, different products. But if you're clear with the vision and where you want to go, being able to hire someone that has that potential to grow with you is really and wants to grow and learn and develop together. I think that's key, because I mean, we grow very quickly, and someone who doesn't want to kind of adapt with the flow of the business could really hurt.
Excellent. Andrew.
I would say as a compliment to that, it is important to kind of know yourself and know your vision, but it's also important to know the job you're really hiring for and to have clear parameters around what it is and what it isn't. And when you're moving from being a solopreneur to being an employer, that's actually a lot about knowing yourself and what things are you not going to do anymore. And is it very realistic for someone else to be able to do that group of things? Is that the right skill set? And I learned that from my first version of the operations director to the second one, that it was the role was wrong the first time, and I needed to mix it up a little bit and say, like, that person has to focus on this. And so I think those go hand in hand, but the vision is also often what's going to get your employees in the door to even talk to you about it.
Yeah, I'll throw something out there too, that as entrepreneurs, we can tolerate a lot, and we'll put up with a lot of things in order to grow and get relief and to make things happen for our clients, as well as for the sake of the business. The downside of that can be, once we have help, it's like, oh God, I finally have some help. And then even no matter how bad the help is, you might not want to get rid of it because you finally had some relief. So that's one of those times when you really have to take that hard look and say, I know I'm going to have to start this process over again, but it's worth it, because the longer you wait, the more imprint, the more damage can occur, and the harder it will be to restart that process. So yeah, it's usually trust your instincts and hit the Band-Aid hard.
I wonder if any of the others who are on here, because there's so many of you who've been great contributors to this hour, have a thing that you'd like to share. So, I don't think the panelists hold all the wisdom of the universe, though you guys are really smart. Anybody else want to just share their 1 second of advice? Go ahead, Claudia.
I think it's being on both sides of it, having hiring and finding some really good talent and then being let go. It just feels lousy on both sides, the person actually letting go and then the person actually being fired. So I am of this mindset going into this new territory for hiring people, that I'm really determined to kind of keep that person's self-esteem intact in some way. It's maybe it's some part of my mission as part of my business is to tell them it's just not a good fit, and kind of hold that at the forefront of that hiring process, because it just feels crappy all the way around. So that's my 2 cents, and maybe I'm being a little bit too idealistic, but so be it.
You're being authentic to you. Katie, go ahead.
I think the biggest thing I've learned through hiring and letting go, not a ton of people, but enough, is to make sure that you have already set your expectations very clearly. You've communicated them, and then you have something concrete to point back to, because the biggest thing in that like conversation of letting go is being clear as to why it's happening. And then no matter how uncomfortable you are, shut your mouth. Say what you need to say and end the conversation, because there's nothing more open to liability as a rambling employer. And I am a talker, and I am a people pleaser, and I'm a Midwesterner, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I have to stop myself and just be very clear. These are the things that we said we needed to happen. After this amount of time, it didn't happen. I don't think it's going to be happening. So we're going to have to separate at this moment.
Great. Very good advice. Anyone else? We have gone 8 minutes over, but what a fantastic conversation. Terry, thank you for co-facilitating. Thank you, panelists, for participating. A lot of food for thought. The recording will be coming. And for those of you who unfortunately got mixed up with the link at the beginning, I hope you got enough out of this, even coming on late. I so appreciate it. I have the idea for the next one being selling to big companies and the challenges that you see there. And I know we'll be coming back to some of you who have done that. Terry, you want to say something?
I think we need to have a 2-hour one of these about how do I get to be profitable.
We'll talk about that. If there are other ideas that you all have, I will also be sending sort of an evaluation form. So tell us how we did, how we could make this better. I so appreciate the hour of your time. Thanks for being part of our Entrepreneurs Forever member community. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks.